is not a positive thing in Scripture. And by the way, this is not just for this contrast is not just true for our culture now. If you go back to the Greco-Roman world at the time of Jesus, you find the same thing, with the exception of some things said about hubris by the Greeks. Pride was mostly a good thing. Humility was a bad thing, and Jesus turns it all upside down, following the same tradition of the Old Testament. Because it's in Proverbs, where we're looking, that God says, everyone who is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. It's in Proverbs where it says, when pride comes, then comes dishonor, but the humble are wise. Proverbs, it says, a man's pride will bring him low, but a humble spirit will obtain honor. Part of the problem we have is that I don't think we really understand what pride is. We don't go deep enough. You've got to peel pride down like an onion. What is pride? I think the best definition of it, by the way, there's like 10 different Hebrew words. There's several Greek words. They're all metaphorical words. None of them are straight literal words. Things like being lifted up of heart or enlarged of heart, or one that's actually from Greek that's actually talks about being blinded as if by smoke and not being able to see clearly. And that really picks up the key to the definition, which comes out of Romans 12, where it says this, you need to think soberly of yourselves. Not to have the wrong opinion, but to think soberly. See, pride is failure to perceive yourself as God perceives yourself. Now why? Why do we have this failure? Well, let's see, that's the first layer. We've got to peel another layer down, and it's for this reason. We perceive the self wrong because self is at the center. Self is our viewing platform. Self is where we look from and see all around. Self is the measuring, the start of the measurement, the point of reference. So when self is at the center of life, not God, that's pride. Now you see, we're already enlarging our view, and we're already beginning to discover something very interesting. At least it's implied. And that is this. Pride doesn't just have a very clear, what I want to call positive. That's positive with a plus, not positive in the sense of good. Plus type pride. That's the one we're very familiar with. That's the pride that says, I'm better than you, I'm important, I'm all that, I'm really something. But there's another kind of pride that I call reverse pride. I'm nothing, I don't matter, I don't count. But you see, that can be pride too. How? Well, if self becomes the referent point, self is at the center, and we're not seeing ourselves as God sees us, then we're being proud. So there's a negative pride as well as a positive pride. Here's what links them all together. Peel the onion down another layer. When it's all about me. Me, me, me. When it measures from me. When the world orbits around me. When I'm at the center of my world. Oh, the terminology, my world, me is all over that terminology. I thought it's interesting. My world, like I have a separate one from everybody else. No, instead of I live in God's world. See the difference? The fact of it is, when you define pride correctly and peel it apart, you find out that pride is everybody's problem. Everybody's got a problem with pride. And pride is a terrible thing. And it's at the heart of everything else that's bad and goes wrong in our lives. Why? Well, think about it. If God belongs at the center, if God belongs to be the reference point, if everything's to be measured from God, if all value counts from what God thinks of it, not what I think of it or what it does for me, if God is at the center, then, but He's not. I mean, if that's where He belongs, but He's not there, I'm there instead, then I've done the worst thing I can do. I have pulled a one-person-sized rebellion against God being God. and I've made myself God in my life if I'm at the center. That's why God says that pride is an abomination to him. I mean, that's pretty bad language, abomination. Because we make ourselves to be gods for ourselves. And by the way, you don't have to think a lot of yourself to do it. Now, if you think a lot of yourself, you probably are doing it. But as long as self is at the center, you've dethroned God and moved him from his place. Well, what are some symptoms of pride? Number one, prideful people tend to omit God. Deuteronomy says things will go well in your life, you'll have success, you'll start to accumulate a little bank balance, and you'll say, look what I did. Boy, I did a good job here. And you'll forget that God did this, that God gave you the strength. Even the things you thought you did, you wouldn't have been able to do it if God hadn't given you the strength to do it. You know, there isn't all the energy that ever was, ever will be in this universe, and nothing you do doesn't have that energy that was created in the first instant of creation. This enormous amount of energy that started in, the astronomers tell us, an infinitesimally small point. That's all right. It's good that I messed that up, as we're going to see later. All came from God. Because before it, there was nothing. And so anything you ever do, everything you ever do, ultimately comes from God, not from you. All you do is rechannel it. You know, that's the best you can say. How do you rechannel it? So, number two, proud people can't acknowledge wrong. They can't tolerate embarrassment or shame. And you see, everybody struggles with this. As I said, I'm going to be brutally honest. So I'm going to pick on you for a minute here. And many people, probably most people here would say, I have difficulty talking to other people about, not everybody, but most people, talking to other people, saying things that God might want me to say to them at a key moment, a key time. I have a lot of trouble doing that. I don't always do that. You know why you don't do that? Because you're afraid of embarrassment. That's pride. Okay? You know, God's clearly said to us we need to do this, and we don't do it. Let's just be honest. We don't do what, we all know we don't do what he tells us to do. Why don't we do what he tells us to do in this area? I'll tell you why. Because you're proud. Well, join the club. You're proud, and you don't want to embarrass yourself, and that is pride. Proud people don't want to be ashamed. They don't want to be embarrassed. In fact, they'll protect themselves from that. So they're likely to say, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not my fault. You misunderstood. I didn't mean that. Proud people are stubbornly willful, often. They have difficulty submitting. You know that, well, I'm proud to be an American. And one of the things that means, by the way, I'm not affirming that view. What I'm saying is people say that. When they say that, one of the things they mean by that is all it means to be American. Independent. I moved from the east to the west, and the independent spirit lives strongly in the mountain west. Well, let me tell you what that is. That's pride. That's pride. Proud people have difficulty submitting, a stubborn willfulness. Failure is not possible often. Anybody who's ever gotten in trouble with substance abuse, let me tell you, one of the elements that started you down the road, pride. Why do I say that? Because you heard, somebody said to you, you shouldn't do this, this is going to get you in trouble, don't do it even once. And what did you say in effect to yourself? Well, that doesn't apply to me, I can do it. Say, I can't fail. Others will fail, I won't fail. That's pride. Simple, that's all it is, it's pride. Well, I'm not saying there aren't other issues, but what I'm saying is when we say I can do it, that's pride. Proud people will protect their self at all costs. Now, by this, I don't just mean, or even predominantly mean, the physical self. I mean the self that I think of as me, who I am, my psyche, my soul, my whatever that, that spiritual thing that makes me is. Pride is all about protecting the self. That's why Proud people can't admit error. That's why